Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very senior and respected journalist from India, currently speaking to us from the UK, Mr. Juggi Bhasin. Juggi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Totally my pleasure to be on your prestigious show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Juggi is an author. He's a political analyst and commentator. He's an amateur theater actor. He's an author of the well-known series and book Agent Rana. And he's the first TV-trained journalist from India. So I'm delighted because I now have him on the other side of the camera. Juggi, before we get into talking journalism, tell me your journey in brief.
Well, Ashutosh, I started in the good old, I don't know, the good old or the good, bad or whatever days of Doordarshan, actually, because when there were no private news channels and Doordarshan was the only channel. So I joined as, in those days, it was called a news correspondent. But we were among the first fully trained news correspondents in the country. We were actually trained at the FTII, Film and Television Institute of India. And then we had the German broadcaster, I think it was an offshoot of DW channel. And those trainers came over and trained us. So fantastic training. Early days. And you know what happens is when in early coverages, there are some significant coverages which stick in your mind. I was the first person when the Babri Masjid fell. I was there with my camera team. I did the first ever Indian journalist, television journalist, to go to North Korea and interview Kim.
Amazing.
That's the grandfather of the present Kim.
Yeah.
And people are quite amazed, how did you land in North Korea?
Yeah.
I interviewed Mikhail Gorbachev, who died recently. So a lot of interesting times and this thing. That was the privilege of being among the first of the lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for someone who started off with Doordarshan, and today there are hundreds of channels, I'd love to get your perspective on how has journalism evolved and changed over the decades?
Well, you know, there is journalism is actually, how do I put it today, that today journalists have become the news to a certain extent.
Correct.
It's not only the news or the broadcasting, it is also journalists per se are becoming the news, which to my mind is a little unfortunate because I still belong to old school where I think that the news has to be given primacy.
Correct.
The second thing, Ashutosh, what is also happening all over is that we are living in a very polarized world. We are living in not only in the Western world, but even in India. So journalism, to some extent, is following that trend. So to get objective news channels is a bit of an ask, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
But that is the state of reality we are living with today. So yeah, it has evolved, but rather devolved to some extent, I would say.
I agree with you. I agree. And yet, you know, Juggi, when I look at it, when I was growing up, and I think I'm older than you are, we used to have a few superstar journalists, you know, someone like a Khushwant Singh, for example. And my grandfather used to make me copy his editorials or writing to learn English properly.
That's right.
They used to decide what the views they had and what I should interpret.
Correct.
Today, everyone can interpret their views based on what they're reading.
That's true.
What are your thoughts on how this has changed?
Absolutely. I think Khushwant Singh actually set the ball rolling long back. And I'm also good friends with his son, Rahul Singh. Rahul is a good friend. You see, what Khushwant did in those early days, but he was very careful to do that, was he started a column he used to give an opinion.
Correct.
So, which was a little different from what used to go, let's say, in the weekly, in the illustrated weekly, or in the other publications, which he was the editor. Opinion in journalism is absolutely fine. And you associate opinion with certain journalists. But what I'm saying is today, it's not only the opinion of individuals, it is the opinion has now entered into mainstream journalism.
Correct.
So today, let's say if I'm, let's not take names, but if I'm watching a particular English channel or I'm watching another one, and I know what kind of a bent they will be, and I know the bent of the other channel. Little unfortunate, because at the end of the day, you're right. Today, because thanks to social media programs like what you are doing, we can all form our own opinion. So I don't need a channel or somebody to tell me what to follow, what to do. Leave it to we are all intelligent enough to make our own decisions.
Correct.
But unfortunately, that is not the case with especially news channels. But I think in that sense, social media is doing a great service.
Absolutely.
Which is, and like the brand called you, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job of this.
Thank you.
So yeah.
But your response gives me a segue to the next question, which is social media has democratized news completely.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your perspective on how our personal devices that we are all carrying in our hands, how are they changing the way each one of us is interpreting and disseminating news?
Correct. So I'll give you a very interesting example. I'll answer this question in a slightly offbeat way.
Sure.
I'm here for almost a month now in London, and I'm staying at the home of a very dear friend who's almost like a family member. She's a German lady called Elke. Elke was a city banker, but before that, she was in the Secret Service with Willy Brandt, and she comes from that generation. And she is an academic also. She reads a lot. Economist is her favorite magazine. And today when I meet Elke, she is sitting on the table, she is having a breakfast, and she is always on a phone reading something. So I said, Elke, I can't believe this. What are you doing? She said, Juggi, you have to change with the times. Today, I have to read something, and I'm always reading from my phone. And that's the big change, Today, we have, as we call, an extra pair of eyes, whether it's a laptop or whether it's a phone. We are constantly surfing. We are constantly... right now, before even I was talking to you, Ashutosh, I was listening to this opinion by somebody called Jonathan Pike, who writes New York Times. Very interesting, very comic kind of a takeoff on the British election system. But that's the world which has changed so much.
Correct.
Instantly, we are every morning, afternoon, evening, we are forming opinions and we are discarding old beliefs. It's a world in change, completely.
Absolutely. Well said. And yet, when I speak to senior people like you, I often wonder, how is technology changing journalism? I've been writing for a long time, from a typeset press to sitting in front of a camera on television. And I remember I was on some of the Doordarshan programs as a resource from ITC days. To today, how is technology changing the way journalism has evolved?
Well, it's made a huge contribution. It's easing a lot of our efforts. Like, I'll give an example. As a former television professional, we used to do something in the old days, which is still obviously done even today by reporters. It's called a piece to camera, where you stand in front of the camera, which Ashutosh very well. You yourself are such a wonderful professional. Now, in the old days, the piece to camera used to memorize your lines, or used to think that this is the way, because today, it's what I call the teleprompter generation.
Right.
Everything is there on cue in front of you. That's one example of how technology, I can bring in wipes, I can bring in so many effects I want to, I can bring in old footage, they can all come and go at the click of a button, So yes, it's but the basics, Ashutosh, I still believe haven't changed. You have to have good sense, and you have to have good communication abilities to communicate your point of view. That hasn't changed.
Well said.
But yes, it helps. It helps a lot.
Well said. But the younger generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and the people younger, they have drifted away from newspapers, magazines, and are getting news only in bite sizes on their personal devices.
That's right.
What does that do to the entire so-called business of journalism?
Very good question. I think it's such an interesting question you asked me. And I see the example of my son who's working in Miami. And Karan has different political views from me, and we have these raging arguments at times. He's completely woke and liberal in a certain way. But the fact is, when I ask Karan that, are you following the news? He says, Pops, listen, here's the thing. I am not interested in these news programs which you have back home in India. But I follow the trends very well. On my laptop or on my phone or something, I know exactly what is going on in the country.
Yeah.
The point is, even among the younger generation, they are following the news. But they are not interested in these lengthy, long-winded, shouting matches, which we have these, what we call in Hindi, the dangal kind of interviews or casts. They are not interested in that, certainly. So we have to give it to them. Shorter, more brisk, more attention-grabbing kind of, maybe with some comic touches thrown in or something more. You just have to compete with the rest of the media to grab their attention, the younger. There's no other way now.
And at least in India, we still have the older people like me who want their 2 newspapers with the morning cup of tea. Where do you see this industry of printing hard copies of newspapers and magazines going?
Oh, I am all for that, Ashutosh. I actually get 5 papers. And even though I'm a non-corporate person in a technical sense, but I still read the Economic Times and obviously all the other papers. That generation is going away. I used to do this column in the Times of India called Agent Rana, which was a comic book format. And it became really popular with the TOI. It ran for almost 2.5, 3 years. And the reason why it was started in the first place was to prop up circulation, because circulation was going down. So they needed some device, they needed some new conduit where the circulation could go up. It is, whether we like it or not, it's a losing battle. Hard copies are going down. Today, I think the only way forward, Ashutosh, is segmented, very, very particular kind of publications which cater to specific needs. The all big newspaper, which is telling you everything, that's over, because you get your news now in the next 5 or 10 minutes what's going on.
Correct.
So yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I suddenly woke up and suddenly my wife was telling me, oh, Cyrus Mistry has passed away. He was in an accident. And the flashes come like this.
Yeah.
So the world has changed.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
But let me now move to Agent Rana. Tell me a little bit about Agent Rana, and what was your hypothesis, other than, of course, what you mentioned of increasing circulation? But I've seen that piece, and it was very popular.
Yeah. I love geopolitical thrillers, both film as well as to read. I'm a follower of the English writer called John Le Carre. These are all Graham Greene. These are all wonderful writers.
Absolutely.
So I always had this deep desire to have some kind of expression in terms of visual kind of a thriller, a geopolitical thriller, a thinking man's thriller to a certain extent. Not only the brawn, but somebody where somebody is doing a lot of thinking also. And as luck would have it, a person we know very well, and I'm sure you probably know about him, Sanjeev Bhargav. He used to be with the Times of India group.
Yeah.
So Sanjeev and I were talking, and Sanjeev said, listen, Juggi, why don't we start this particular thing? I'm looking for something to take the circulation up. This seems like a wonderful reason. I can get the board approval. I'm pretty confident about that. So you think we can pull this off? I said, certainly we can pull it off.
Yeah.
That was the genesis. That's how it all started.
Okay.
I think the Times of India board gave the approval, and it was on its way. And it became really popular.
Absolutely. But tell me, for our viewers and listeners who may not have heard about it, what were some of your hypotheses when you started?
My hypothesis, it was based on what I call fictionalized reality.
Okay,
that's the term I'm going to use. The fictionalized, it ran for almost, one story actually ran for almost a year. Then there was another story. The first story was based partly on our dealings with our neighbor, Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one was on a renegade Chinese, but the China element also came in. So you can say it was a potpourri of nationalism, of action, of a lot of thinking, of strategy. It had a lot of ingredients into it. Fast-paced. There were also talk of making a film or something about it. I know what's happening to that. But that was the context is fictionalized reality of our current events. So a lot of the events, and you could find echoes of that, what's happening in real life. So that was the inspiration, actually. That's what gave it a certain topicality, immediacy, and the fact that people could relate to it.
Very interesting. Another question relating to journalists, and I'm going to ask you this question from the perspective of the young journalists, because there are a lot of young journalists, the millennials and the Gen Zs. How are they? And they have come as a breath of fresh air, as I'm sure you would see with your son or my son, and very different views. When they have come into the profession of journalism, as journalists, how are they changing the way organizations have started to think?
Well, for one thing, journalism today is a far more not lucrative profession, but a much more well-paying profession. The equation has changed. They especially business journalists, they're doing well for themselves in a certain way. So it's a serious career option for a lot of people who then graduate from business journalism and move to other academia. And, there's a back and forth which is going on. But what the young journalists have done is that, I don't know if it's good or bad, but they certainly bring a lot of what I call opinion with them. A lot of them, their opinion has been shaped today in liberal environments, in liberal universities, whether in India or abroad. So they bring that particular conviction with them. As I said, our mantra in our time used to be a certain level of objectivity, for the want of a better word.
Right.
Today, they are not afraid to take sides. Now, it's a debatable point whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But their conviction, whether it's on environment, whether it is on gender, whether it's on women's rights, which is welcome to. At one level, it's really welcome. But at another level, you are taking a stand somewhere. So what we call the younger lot actually are not afraid to take a stand. Now the jury is out there. It's a great thing or not a great thing. I don't know. But that's what's really happening with a lot of the younger journalists today.
Very interesting. I have time for two more questions. My next question is what we spoke about very briefly earlier. And that is about how journalists are now getting divided along political lines.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that the younger people don't hesitate or have the courage to take sides. I have two parts of this question. What has caused this? And is this good or not so good for journalism?
Well, I'll tell you what is not good for journalism. Let's start with that first. Okay. What is not good for journalism is when you have what is called not paid journalism, but when you have vested interest journalism. For instance, there are journalists who all of us know are very closely associated with certain political entities.
Correct.
And when that projection is coming in the telecast, when that projection, let's say, even is coming on social media, for instance, that's not a very happy situation, to be honest. Because everybody knows who these people are and how their association. Some of them are doing it actually in India. Ashutosh is doing it for a Rajya Sabha ticket. Let me tell you that.
Wow.
That's the dream of every journalist. I want to get a Rajya Sabha ticket at the end of the day. That's not a healthy thing. I certainly don't mind now because the world has changed. If people have convictions, by all means, please show. But just write what is called an opinion out there. That this is my opinion, which is fair enough. You have an opinion, do that. Don't pass it off as news. That's my only problem.
Correct.
Once people pass it off as news, that this is the sacred gospel news, that's not true. The news is somewhere very, it's somewhere in between. As I said, the truth always lies somewhere in between. It's neither this side or that side.
Absolutely right.
So, yeah. So that's the good and the bad of journalism.
Fantastic. And my last question to you, based on your amazing journey as a journalist and everything that you have achieved, For our young viewers and listeners, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want them to take away from your life's journey and from our conversation?
Okay. The first thing was follow your heart.
Okay.
I am such a great believer in that.
Yeah.
Follow your, all of us,
Mm.
and there is this classic dilemma that sometimes a lot of people are doing jobs, their heart is not really there in it, but follow your heart. I mean, I just give my example, when I was growing up, my mom, because that was the era of कि सिर्फ engineer है या doctor है और कुछ
Correct.
नहीं है, and she forced me into science. And
Absolutely.
I couldn't, Ashutosh, I was struggling. I don't know how I passed my maths in class 12. But I later took to arts and everything. I did very well, topped actually in the university also. But follow your heart. That's very, very important.
Wonderful.
Have conviction,
Yeah.
but also be empathetic.
Yeah.
I keep telling to younger people, if you lose your empathy,
Yeah.
you have to take positions in life, fair enough, but don't be hardline about your positions.
Correct.
Don't lose your sense of empathy, because that is the greatest gift we all have. And if we combine these two, that's good enough. We are good human beings. That's what really matters in the end.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Well said. Juggi, on that note, and your wonderful lessons of follow your heart, have conviction, be empathetic, and at the end of it, we are all good human beings. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your journey as a journalist, about everything that you have learned, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on the way journalism has evolved. Thank you also for speaking to me about Agent Rana. Thank you again for speaking to me, and finally, good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, and thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to connect with all your wonderful readers all over the world. And more power to you and your program.
Thank you.
And congratulations once again on this wonderful The Brand Called You.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.